think and act in a way that not only considers yourself, but the generations 1,000 years into the future. I grew up in the evangelical, fundamentalist vein of church and came out with a pretty warped view of the world and myself. It is a view that sees everything in an expendable light due to a future hope of perfection where everything else will just be wiped away. This causes you to neglect a lot of what is right in front of you, whether it's your talent, mental health, your neighbor, or the planet you live on. I've since rejected this notion, and I've adopted a new way of thinking. It's that everything restores. It's a universal pattern that I see as transcending through everything. With that, I think it's important to engage in this pattern of restoration. Over the past 5 years, I've gone through a whole slew of ups and downs in terms of spirituality and my understanding of the world. And in this process, I've come across quite a few unique individuals with different understandings. One of these individuals is Topher Grant. Topher is the CEO of a marketing company called Giddy Up here in Ventura, California. I came across Topher through church ironically, but he had pretty different views compared to the teachings and understandings being taught at the church we met at. Needless to say, this was attractive in that I always had a deep rut of doubt when it came to how we operated as an organization, people, and culture. As I got to know Topher, I discovered his deep desire and vision to encourage and sow a heart of stewardship and goodness into the world through music, recreation, and being in nature with one another and communing through these things. One of Topher's weekend hobbies is building check dams in different areas of the Los Padres National Forest. These dams serve multiple purposes. They provide a convenient crossing for hikers who are coming through and enjoying the wilderness, and they slow the flow of water without stopping it, which allows the water to better absorb into the ground, recharge the water table, and give life to the land around it, opposed to quickly running by. I had the chance to go out with Topher and his cousin and build one of these dams and hear about Topher's vision for community and wilderness restoration.
So the mission is actually to build wilderness family campgrounds like an hour or two outside of cities around the world, and to have the people of that city to build it and plant it. By connecting landowners, governments, conservationists, volunteer organizations, all these people that could be involved in it.
Yeah.
But specifically not just for conservation like we did in the US nationally, but which is
like with the parks and whatnot.
Yeah, with the parks, which is all like real conservation. But I mean like conservation that has private recreation as the basis, but not just conservation, which this is, but regeneration, right? So the parks were already beautiful places that we didn't destroy. But now there's all these other beautiful places that are private that have been degraded over time by people using the resources available, but not putting back, not like pouring back into the resources. And so this is about, just imagine here in the county of Ventura, the county of Santa Barbara, we have all this beautiful national forest, national parkland, and conservation. But there's a limited amount of use for it because there's a limited amount of campgrounds, and there's a lot of people that want to use it up here. We're kind of blessed in that way.
Yeah.
But private campgrounds, like there's a surgence of hip camp because of Airbnb and VPRO and people wanting to be able to travel and leverage other people's private property.
Yeah.
And now with hip camp, which is basically the camping version of Airbnb, I think there's an opportunity for communities to come together to build private family campgrounds in the wilderness and monetize them with hip camp, and ultimately through all the grants and programs that are around nationally and globally to really support the development of this with children, with schools, with churches, with community groups, right?
Yeah.
That can actually come together and not just enjoy private land and beautiful wilderness land, but ultimately can actually establish it.
Yeah.
And establish it with their next generation and for future generations. So it's actually it's the basis of what the conservation movement in America started as, which was private people creating things that were built for public use.
Yeah.
This is just about continuing that, really. So it ties back to like the things I read with like Thoreau and Muir and these poets who sold conservation to the world, essentially, started to, and like they hooked me, It's like, yeah, we need these places, and these places are awesome, and I'm very thankful for the people that made them and established them, and maybe we should be those people, in our generation. Yeah, like why stop now? Like why stop with those people? Like we could do it just down the road too. We could extend the boundaries of that whole thing. So the idea is to rebuild the church through regenerative forestry, family, wilderness campsites. So family wilderness campsites that are created through nonprofits. Very much in the way that the church runs, right? Where they have a nonprofit that helps all these other little nonprofits, build something.
Yeah.
But instead of a building here, we're talking about land. We're talking about a place where everyone in that area, like let's think about Ventura. There's over 100,000 people. There's over 100 congregations of different faith-based organizations that meet. There's plenty of conservationists. There's plenty of landowners. There's plenty of people that want to support conservation, both monetarily with their time or through their words and promotion, And that's the power of this thing, is how do you plant a seed that other people will tend, because it tends to their needs, both in recreation and spirituality. And I don't mean the spirituality that is just in like organized religion, but the spirituality that is in nature and in the wilderness and in spending time in community with other people, sharing food and sharing fun, Let's think about it this way, like rivers in the wasteland. If that's what we're doing, that's the overarching concept of what we would be doing in the Los Padres forest. Now, I've actually I don't know if that property or some other property in California is going to be the first thing we do, but I want it to be near us so that we can do it in our state and where we're from, or start it here and make that the thing that we can document and start to get people on board with this idea. I think that like our generation and the generations that are coming up below us, they feel that. And if we put it in song with some of the best producers and songwriters and artists of our generation, we can build the dopest album of the decade. Or at least like the top 100, Like if we aim for the dopest, I think we could probably get the dopest, but we'll let other people debate about that once it's done, But that came out of this idea of like, okay, if I'm going to seed this and take all of the increase which I received in 2020, which was a really intense year for the world, and pour it into charity to give back to my community, in a way that's different than any way I've given back to the community before, which is to other organizations, but instead to like start a new thing that has a mission and a vision. It would obviously have to be aligned with the things that like I really love, like the wilderness, regeneration, family camping, bringing people together to like listen to music and eat food and have a good time, play games, hike, recreate. Video is just going to be able to show it to people, and we need to start doing it to show it to people. But music is going to be the thing that brings it to people. This is going to sound totally weird and maybe like chaos magic to some people, But I have this thought that if, as we put the intention into the music, where we consider like the flavors of the generation, the adjectives that we could use to describe like our hope for it, the themes of this thing, which ultimately, I'm calling like the feast, The themes of the feast, you know, and then also just the names of the people, the artists, and all the people involved that would like don't just want to make the dopest album of the decade, but they want to do it to get to 1 billion trees, you know, because all these other people are getting to 1 billion trees, world governments, organizations, charitable organizations, you know, businesses, but through music, that's cool. That's really fresh. And I think here's the thing: if we get all the people to move, like if we have like, let's imagine it was not just the dopest album of the decade, but a better one would be the biggest album of the decade. Like it has the biggest numbers on Spotify and YouTube, right? Just imagine that. And it was played in all the dance clubs. It was played in like all the places, the venues that people go listen to music and consume music, which is how often those numbers get so big, you know? Well, if we get people to move to it, not just listen to it, you know, and hear it, but like move their bodies to it, like that's a really interesting way to be able to take ideas and turn them into vibrations that like move people's bodies and maybe move the world, you know? So it's just an interesting thought. Like, could we move the world? Could we like shake people by hitting them in the heart with the sound muscle, you know?
Making noise to
yeah, that
change
just
the
like
collective consciousness.
gets them to rejoice rather than to feel so enslaved, and to see the beauty in the world rather than all the oppression, and to go for the beauty, to go for the things that are in their hearts and that are beautiful, rather than to be bogged down by other people's narratives, you know? So yeah, I think the vision, as you asked me earlier today, is about changing the human narrative in a major way, away from destruction and towards stewardship. And from what I understand, that's something that like the church really needs too. And so I'm, you know, as somebody who like has faith and like believes in this book of covenants, I'm really totally disappointed that like everyone else isn't into this and isn't doing it. And so rather than being disappointed about that, I just like, I wonder if I can change their minds and change everyone's mind kind of in the same way, like not just aim for them, but kind of expect that like, I don't know who in the world is a part of God's family. So maybe I could like make a sound and call them out, have them come to me, you know? So that's the idea.
Awesome.
So yeah, the one I'm naming up here, I'm currently calling like Adventure Haven, like a little jumping point for adventure.
Yeah.
But that's just like the one that would be my starting point and a gift, kind of just like a seed gift to this area, and then asking like the governments and the communities and people to come help it happen. I'm just gonna more like get the land, donate it, go donate a plan, go work with permaculture designers to like build a plan of how to do it over a decade or two.
Yeah.
Get a budget. And while I pour into it every year, like ask other people to come alongside me and do it. And hopefully build up the next generation, because that's who we need to like take care of it once we're done, you know?
Stewardship. I think that's what it all comes down to. We live in a highly consumptive world, and this can be a challenging thing to adopt for some. I think what I appreciate most about Topher's vision is that it engages the world as it is, and through that, it seeks to bring about a collective change in perception and consciousness that views the world around them and the people around them as a part of themselves, and not only believe that and engage in that for your lifetime, but also for the generations to come. This isn't a new mentality. This is the 7th generation principle. It's an ancient philosophy and practice of the Iroquois native peoples. While this idea is often referred to in the context of environmental sustainability in our current moment, it's really an idea that transcends all aspects of life. Topher made the point that he wants to shift the consciousness of people towards goodness, to seek and go towards goodness and beauty opposed to oppression. Oppression doesn't work for anyone but the oppressor. We have plenty of examples of people and systems in this world that keep people down. We need to reject those mindsets and institutions and engage in ways that recognize the wholeness of being. That being ourselves, our neighbor, the earth we live on that provides everything for us, This is obviously very nuanced in how it manifests, but it stands nonetheless, and we need to strive in this way. I'll allow Wendell Berry's words once again to carry us out. Go with your love to the fields, and lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap, swear allegiance to what is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and politicos can predict your motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.